welcome to the second week in our family vacation series. We want to welcome our online viewers today. Thanks for joining us. We're glad that you could be here with us. And what we're trying to do in this series is take a vacation away from all the hurry, away from all the conflict, away from all the expectations that we all have in our families, that every family experiences. We're trying to get away. And today we're going to be talking about the fight, the conflict that we have in every one of our families. And I wear this shirt today because it represents a little bit of conflict in my family. I know some of the families out here, when you live in Oklahoma, you have that same conflict. A little bit of button heads, a little bit of bedlam going on. And it just kind of represents, hey, nothing is going to be okay. Nothing is always going to be all rosy all the time. We have a lot of things in common in our household, but we got people split right down the middle. And it's just the way it goes. And probably the only thing that we all have in common in our families is conflict, is that we all fuss, we all fight, and we don't get along. There's just not a time where we're always going to be rosy. That's not Leave It to Beaver. That's not what families look like today. And here's the bad part. Because in every conflict, there seems to be a winner. But when you win an argument in a family, there is no winner. And there is more baggage that comes along with that. When it comes to family conflict, it's never good to have a winner. You really don't win anything, honestly. If you win an argument in the courtroom, good job. You did your job well, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. If you get your way in the meeting, I'll give you a high five on that. Hopefully you get a promotion and things are going well for you. But if you win a fight in the bedroom, if you win a fight in the living room or in the kitchen or anywhere in the house, nobody really wins at all. Because not both parties are ever going to walk out happy, and usually neither party is going to walk out happy anyway. Conflict in family is unlike any other conflict. It's more complicated, it's more emotional than any other conflict you'll experience in this world. And the problem with conflict is that none of us process it the same way. That's why it's so hard, and that's why nobody ever really understands which way we're going. There are many different ways to process conflict, and some of us approach conflict as a peacemaker. Some of us really like to back out of the way. It's kind of like me when it comes to where you want to decide to go eat. I really don't care. Let's just go along with the crowd there. That's how I operate. I don't have a dog in this fight. And some of us like, no, it's okay. They don't want to argue. You're not going to get any pushback from them. There's not going to be any arguments at all. And that's just the way they're going to operate. Some of us are going to act as a sulker. It's kind of that Charlie Brown mentality where it's like, I'm fine. It's okay. I'm fine. Everything all right with you? No, I'm all right. We're good. Some of us are stuffers. And we have this thing that we just keep stuffing inside of us, and eventually it's going to explode. But whenever you ask in the middle of a conflict, everything okay? I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm good. And you know the stuffers, and you've seen the stuffers. Some of you have those stuffers in your family. And some of us are very good litigators, and you love to argue. And we've got one of those in my family, and he's 9 years old, and I don't understand how we created this kid. But he wants to argue, and he's never wrong about anything, and he always wants to push back. He always wants to be right. He doesn't understand. If you asked him if he was ever wrong, he would say, no, it's not that I don't believe that I'm never wrong. I get it all the time. I know what's happening. And then you have the screamer. The screamer loves to get in fights. The screamer loves the conflict because the screamer grew up in those. And if they grew up that way, then they're probably just going to yell all the time. That's the way it is. If your family yelled, you're probably going to yell too. You just want to get it out. You don't like the stuff. You don't like the peacemake. You don't like any of that stuff. You like the conflict. And as long as there is family, there's going to be conflict. You can't run away from it. That is a reality. That's where we're going. And even though there are very many different versions of people, and even though there are very many different approaches to conflict, what we're going to discover today is that there's really only one source of conflict in family. There are a lot of approaches to how we're going to handle conflict. And there's a lot of responses to conflict and how you get it or how you push back. But there's really only one source for conflict, for all the conflict that happens in your family, or really for any conflict, period, for that matter. And I'm going to do my best, okay? I'm going to do my best to help us figure out what that source is. And the good thing about that is that it doesn't really come from me at all. It comes from a greater authority than me. It comes straight from the Bible. But if we can acknowledge and if we can own this, we're going to be able to make progress in handling conflict that appears in every one of our families. I truly believe that if everybody in the family can wrap their minds around this one single idea, if we can all own this one idea, I promise you that the tension in families is going to ease up, and it's going to bring the tone in your family in a different level. It's going to change, and it's going to be much easier to breathe. You're not going to be walking on eggshells all the time. And essentially, your family vacation will be the best one you're ever going to remember. That's how powerful this principle is. And if you have your Bibles, you'll want to turn to James chapter 4 with us today. We're gonna follow along, and I'd love for you to highlight some of this stuff, and because I really want to make progress in this together. Because I truly believe this is a powerful principle, and we're going to be able to see some change in our lives, in the lives of those in our families, and that's what we care about here. That's what we're driving at, is family happiness. And this stuff is great insight, and it's really probably some of the most profound advice that you're ever going to read on conflict when you're looking here in James 4. However, I do think that there's going to be a little bit of pushback. I do think that you're not going to agree with everything. You're going to resist. You're going to argue with me probably throughout this entire message, and that's absolutely fine. I get that, because whenever I'm studying for this, when I'm looking at this, it's me doing the same thing. It's hard to accept this and change my patterns and my beliefs on this. But like I said, I didn't come up with this stuff. I'm not smart enough to come up with this stuff. And I'm really not bold enough to say such things in just a normal conversation. But whenever I have the stage, I love going to what the Bible has to say about it. And if I didn't have the authority of Scripture behind me, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable sharing this today. But I do. So let's look at James chapter 4, and let's jump in. Here's what he says. He says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you?" Again, here is a question that's so general, and you think, well, there can't be one answer. It can't just be one thing. There's got to be as many answers to this question as there are people in the room. My wife would say that we fight more whenever I'm trying to fix the stuff that's happening in her lives. And I would say we fight more when she doesn't let me fix the stuff that's happening in her lives. That's just the way it goes. I have one perspective, she has another. And there are all sorts of reasons that we fight in our families, right? That maybe it's because the kids don't listen, or maybe it's because they can't keep their hands off of each other, and maybe it's because they're interrupting too much, or maybe between spouses it's because we can't agree on what the budget is going to look like for that month. But most of the time, when we fight, it's because someone else is upset about something, right? I mean, that's really what's happening. The arguments come because we're upset. You did this, or you did that, or you made me feel this way, or you made me do this, and you made me a horrible person, and that's why we fight. I want you to listen to this truth. Every time you blame someone else for your happiness, you hand it over to the person that you're in conflict with. I want you to think about this. You got your happiness right here, right? Okay? You're all smiling and you're happy about things. And then all of a sudden you're saying, I cannot stand you right now. I want to give this over to you. You hold on to this until we're done with this. Because I can't go through with this until you hand me back my happiness. So why don't you hold on to it and you come back to me when you're ready to give me my happiness back. That's the way this thing works. We're only happy when we get our way. And how many of you really want to give control of your happiness over to someone else? The way God's designed this is so you can be in control of this. You're in control of your emotions and not someone else affecting you. Nobody wants to give control to anybody else. But until you do what James is about to tell us to do, you have no option but to hand that over until you've got it all figured out and you've resolved the conflict. And like I said at the beginning, there's no win. Here's what James said. There's really not more than one source of conflict. He asked this rhetorical question. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Remember this. And we're thinking there's this multitude of things. There's a list of things that cause conflict. And we can go through each one of these things if we want to. And he says, no. There's not. There's really only one thing. You don't even understand the source. That's why you continue to have conflict. And he dives in here. He says, don't they come from your desires that battle within you? He says, ultimately, don't your quarrels come from something that's inside of you? And I want to say, no, they don't. No, they come from something that's inside them. That's their problem. That's what I want to say. James says there's one common source. There is one common enemy. There's one common root, and that is this. The common source of all your fights and all your quarrels is something inside of you. That's where it comes from. And that's what it all boils down into. And I'm sure that you love it whenever you get on here and you want to come and listen to this uplifting, encouraging message from the Word of God. And James points it back and he says, no, this is on you. This isn't anything else that someone else is going to control. This is on you. It's inside of you. You have a desire. Every single one of us have a conflict, and every single person that's involved in a conflict with us, there is this desire that's inside of you that is spilling out onto another person. And there's this conflict that is creating a conflict with the people around you. The thing that's going on inside of you is creating conflict with the people around you. Wrap your mind around that. James says it always begins with something inside of you. And if we just stop right there and we really thought through our most recent conflict, if we really thought through our most recent quarrel, if we just stopped there and we had the courage to own this very simple idea, it would immediately take down the temperature level in the heat of the moment. It would break the tension that's going on if we were able to step back. If we're going through these conflicts with our families and we just pause. And he goes on and he says, you desire, but you do not have. He says every time that there's a conflict, you want something. You desire something. Every time that there's a conflict within someone and you in the family, within any other parties in the family, every time it comes up, every time it happens over and over and over again, even if it's the same thing, there is something that you do not have. And many of you are saying, no, it's not something I don't have. It's something that I deserve. This is how we entered into this agreement. And he says, listen, I got into a marriage contract. We said we were going to be these people. He promised this or she promised this. We deserve a little bit better from the other party. And the point is, every time that there's a conflict, every single time in your family, there's something that you don't have that you want, that you think you deserve. And then he says this, and this is harsh. So you kill. You kill. Now, James is not talking to people on death row here. He's talking to people in a church. He's not talking to people in prisons, people that have been locked up. He's talking to people inside of a church. And he's using hyperbole here, and he's saying it's very relevant when we start to think about this, about what happens in our families. He says, here's what happens. Sometimes you want something. You want something so badly that you are willing to go to people that you love the most, and you're willing to break that relationship up. You're willing to kill, if you will, is what he says. Some of us have seen these relationships happen within our families. Some of us have been in those relationships where we have worn out are welcome even within our own homes. Maybe it's been a parent that kills a relationship with their kid because that kid did not do exactly what the parent wanted. I'm not just talking about sinful stuff. I'm talking about things about going down a certain career path or picking the right friends or whatever it is. And you want something from someone, whether it's your husband or your wife or your son or your daughter, and you want it bad enough and you want it your way in their life. In your desire to get what you want from them, in order to get what you want out of them, oftentimes you want something so bad, you think you're going to feel better. You think that everything is going to be better in your life. You think you want something so bad that you're going to be prouder. If I can just make my kid that way in that sport, I'm going to be prouder of them. You want it so bad. You want something from them that you think is going to make you happier, and you think it's going to make you more fulfilled, so you kill. You put such a strain on a relationship that shouldn't be there in the first place. And when we want something bad enough from someone, we have the potential to destroy our relationships, and that's not the way God has designed families to be. And you've seen it many times. And unfortunately, some of us are in the process of doing that right now. And here's how we defend it. But I just want the best for her. I just want the best for my wife. I want her to be the best person she can be. I just want the best for him. I just want the best for my kids, and I want to push them hard because I want them to excel in that activity. I want them to reach their full potential. And you lie to yourself. Because it's not really about them. It's about something inside of you. You want something, you're not getting it, and you're going to use your words and you're going to use your actions to get what you want, one way or the other. Could you imagine what would happen in our homes if we just owned this one little idea? James goes on and he says, you covet, but you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and you fight. And we're right back to where we began at. Couples argue. They wonder why they can't get along. And James says, each of you want something. You both want something from each other, and you just can't get it. So let's pause for a second. Let's do a little application. And I think this is important because I wonder, what if in the middle of a conflict, what if you're in the midst of a conversation, a conflict begins to escalate a little bit, or even before the conflict begins, you pause, you take a deep breath, and you recognize part of what I'm feeling right now is because I'm not getting what I want. What if you were able to do that? What if you could control it that way in the midst of a conflict? Part of what I'm feeling right now is because I can't get what I want. That is a game changer. That changes everything if you're able to do that. If everybody in the family could take a step back, could pause and take a deep breath and say, part of what's happening right now is that I'm not getting what I want. That is a game changer. What if in the middle of a conflict you stop and you said to that other person, you know what part of the problem is? I'm not getting what I want. What if your husband or your wife or your teenage son and daughter said, well, you know what, Dad? You know what part of the problem is? I'm not getting what I want either. What if that happened? Would that not revolutionize the sound in your home? Would that not change the things that are beginning to happen? Because here's what's happening. And maybe we should practice this. Maybe we should practice this with emotion. You know what part of the problem is? Because that's what we do, right? We point. You know what part of the problem is right now? I'm not getting what I want. Changes everything. But you know what happens when we do that? You know what happens when we own this idea? When we say, you know what part of the problem is? And we point it back to us, I'm not getting what I want. The problem is this. The moment that you own up to any of the conflict, the tension decreases, yes, but the problem is you lose leverage. And I don't think many of us are willing to do that because leverage can be powerful. Part of the problem is as soon as you even own a little bit of the problem, even though the temperature level drops big time, the problem becomes bigger, and the other party says, yeah, you're right. You lose leverage. You lose part of your ability to convince the other person what you were trying to say. You don't get what you want anymore. And hopefully you're going to be okay with that. Because that's what James says you have to do. You want to know how to get through these quarrels and these fights? You own up to it. You know that it's inside of you. And just like I said in the beginning, you're not going to win. You don't win the conflict anyway. You can't win an argument in the home anyway. There's no win. So unlike most sports in the world that we get so wrapped up into, and we think in sports, what is it? Defense what? Defense wins championships, right? If defense wins championships, does that work in the family? No. In the family, defense builds up walls. And defense causes more quarrels. The best defense in a family is no defense at all. No defense at all. It's better to just take the blame for everything. And I know this is hard because it would be very hard for me because ultimately it has to go back to something, right? It's always like, you know what, you're right. And you don't want to be egotistical about it, but what if you were able to step back and just take the blame? You know what? It is me. You know what? It is me. If I didn't ask you to marry me in the first place, we wouldn't be in this conversation right now, right? I mean, it is me. If we didn't have these kids right now, it's all my fault. I'm the one that did it. We wouldn't even have this issue right now. It's my fault. What if you were able to do that? The best defense is no defense. It's just dropping it. And I'm not saying getting trampled on. I'm saying humbling ourselves. And the reason we have a hard time stopping in the middle of an argument, the reason it's so hard to stop yourself as you get into an argument in the first place, the reason that you don't want to take blame is because you lose leverage. You don't own the power anymore. And James says, yes, that's my point. But if everyone in the family is willing to do their part and lose a little leverage, then you won't fight and quarrel so much. You know what part of the problem is here? I'm not getting what I want. Not getting what I want. Even if it's the very smallest bit of blame that you can take on your back to change the nature of your home, it's going to change everything. If you're willing to admit that you're at least part of the problem, it powerfully opens your eyes to a bigger picture. And you see, oh man, maybe I was more of a problem in the first place. Because when the smallest bit of blame is recognized and owned, it gets bigger and bigger. And then we can back the conflict up. Now, James doesn't end there. He says, you do not have because you do not ask God. This is where it changes. This is powerful here. And I would say this. If you're not a Christian, and if you're listening in with us today, and if everything I've said so far, you could take that home. You can apply that to your lives, and it will work. It changes the attitudes, and it affects the something that's going on in the brain of everybody in your family. You can take that as your own. You can make that work for you. You don't have to do the Bible part of it if you don't want to recognize how to stop the conflict. But if you're a Jesus follower, if you're a Christ follower, the rest of this stuff we really have to take on. And this is James, the brother of Jesus, that's writing this. And he says, you don't have because you don't ask God. And it's that simple. I mean, if you are a Christ follower, you should know this, right? In other words, instead of saying, you know what part of the problem is, I'm not getting what I want. He's saying, did it ever occur to you to get on your knees and talk to God about it? What if you didn't get all riled up in the first place and storm out of the conversation? What if you didn't go and get out that notepad and you start writing a 3-point thesis on how they were wrong, and then you put a big frown face on it and like, here, you handle this and see that in the morning when you first wake. What if that didn't happen? What if you didn't get that far in the first place? Did it ever occur to you to talk to God about it first instead of taking these human weaknesses that we have and getting it all in the way? Did it ever occur to you to back up, take a deep breath, and talk to God about it first? God, I just want my husband to get a better job. God, I just want my teenage daughter to have better friends. James says, has it ever occurred to you that before you go extracting something from someone else for your benefit, because that's really what it is about. We become a little selfish in every element there. Before you go raging in there, has it occurred to you to get on your knees and to pour out your heart to God first? Did it even occur to you? You don't have because you don't ask God. And well, we say, no, it didn't really occur to me. And usually if we do pray, we're saying, God, change him. God, change her. God, fix him, fix her, so I don't have to deal with this. And it's so we can get something that we want again, right? Has it ever occurred to you that to get what you want, there's something that you want that you're not getting because you're trying to squeeze something out of someone that they don't have to give in the first place? You have not because you haven't asked God. This is powerful. This is a discipleship issue. This is a growth issue on a personal level. We can take family out of the equation here and say, I've got something to work on now. And some of you do this, and you could definitely see a change in your life. You could definitely see a difference in the conversation in your family. And what you would normally think of as their problem, and you point and point and point, and it becomes increasingly evident that we all have issues. And you're willing to take that on. And you begin to know that part of the problem is I'm not getting what I want. And I'm beginning to understand that what I want, maybe you don't have in the first place. Well, James goes on, and in this part, many of you aren't going to like this too much, but he says, when you ask, you don't receive, because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. And here's what James is saying. He's saying, Christ followers, listen, God followers, I want you to listen to me here. You're not always going to get what you ask God for. What? You're not always going to get it, because here's the deal. God doesn't want to mess you up any more than you already are. He doesn't want to mess you up. Have you taken this to God, and have you been able to take no for an answer? And can you own part of that and then begin the conversation? Have you went through all this? Here's the question that we're going to end with today. Who in your family is suffering because you are not getting your way? Who feels this pressure to change because of what you do to them, what you say? Who feels the pressure to behave in a certain way? Who feels the pressure to start something? Who feels the pressure to stop something? Who feels the pressure to work harder? Who feels this pressure to get skinnier, to go work out more? Who's feeling the pressure because you've communicated in some way that you would be happier if they did it a certain way? It's happening, right? Who's being affected in your family because of what we want? Who in your family is suffering because you're not getting your way? And what would happen in your family if you took that pressure off? What if you took that pressure off your grown son, your grown daughter? There are grown adults out there that are still trying to make people happy, trying to make those parents happy. And just conflict has gotten in the way. What you could do today, what is something you could do today? Maybe through a letter, maybe through an email, maybe through a lunch appointment or a phone call or whatever it is. You began to take this unnecessary, this inappropriate pressure off of someone else's lives. And I think, man, am I doing this to my little kids? I don't want to get there. You know why you quarrel and fight so much in your family? Because there's something that you want and you're not getting it. There's something that you want and you're not getting it. And you know why they quarrel and they fight with you? Because there's something that they want and they're not getting it. We're all dealing with this together. My advice would be this: hold on. Hold on to your own happiness. Don't give it away by blaming everyone else. Hold on to your happiness. You want to take a vacation from this conflict? Take a pause before the conversation. Have this come to Jesus meeting first. Let's recognize that there's something that I want and I'm needing to deal with this between me and God before I need to deal with it between me and you. Between me and anybody else in my family. I have something that I want and I'm not getting it my way. Let's go to God with this first. God, thank you for a reminder, for the brother of your son, however it is that works. We thank you for James being able to write this down, for it to be real in our lives. We thank you, God, for reminding us that we all have this in our families. And as we venture out and all these different things in our lives, we need to take a vacation from all the mess and all the hurry and all the conflict and all these expectations that we have. We need to take a step back, God, and we need to give you your place in our lives. God, we thank you. We thank you for your servant James and being able to put this on paper so we can have this so many years later, these reminders, this God-ordained wisdom that you want to soak into our lives. We thank you for your son Jesus, who has been through it, who has humbled himself, and who has said, I'll take it. We thank you for that. It's in his name we pray. Amen.